Welcome to the Career Revolution interview series. Here you will find inspiration and fire to encourage you to revolutionize your career and find your calling. This interview series is all about interviewing ordinary people like you and I who've done the extraordinary in their career to revolutionize their career. Please be sure to follow the company page, Licia Dewing Career Strategist Co. That's where my team and I can keep close to you, and that's where you will get more information and added benefits by showing up and following us live. Welcome to my audience, whether you're watching us here on LinkedIn, live or in replay, whether you're watching us on Facebook, whether you're listening to the podcast version of this on Spotify or iTunes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Our guest today is Rush Naidoo. Rush Naidoo is the founder and CEO of Onyx Educate, a new edtech startup in Cape Town that launched during lockdown last year and is revolutionizing the way that students, whether they be in Matric or tertiary education, prepare for exams and study. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite him into the studio. Welcome,
Hi,
Rush.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm extremely excited to be talking to you and to have you here on this platform, because your story, your journey within your career is the epitome of revolutionizing. And let's get into that. Let's get into that straight away and start unpacking it. Before we talk about what the amazing businesses and startup that you founded, we're going to get to that. I want to take everyone back to the beginning, or the point where you started to hit friction in your career and what was going on, what was happening or what wasn't happening. And then we're going to go through and talk about the present day. So tell us the story. Like, what did you qualify as? What did you intend to sort of set out doing in the world? What was the first stepping stone?
Okay, perfect. Well, firstly, thank you for having me on. When I finished my high school career, I decided to go into UCT and study business science, and for me, that was quite a natural progression. My family's always been involved in business, so that seemed like the normal thing to do. I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to get into, especially from a major point of view, but eventually I found myself majoring in finance at UCT, and I completed my degree, and then got into the Standard Bank graduate program. I was one of two. Yeah, I was one of two selected out of, I think, a pool of 10,000 applicants for the Global Markets graduate program, and it's an excellent program. But I quickly found myself not really enjoying what I was doing. My passion wasn't really still lying there, and even after an additional 2 years at another wealth tech fund, I still found that I wasn't creating the impact that I really want to create. I wasn't.
Okay, so pause. I'm going to take you back to when you were studying what you were studying, you were really enjoying it, correct? So it was,
yeah, absolutely.
as you said, you enjoyed it, it was exciting, and you were taking the steps. I mean, you'd received an amazing award and accolade, to get to beat down how many thousands of people to be able to get into the program. But in reality, the application of your qualification or using it within the working world, that was when you started to go, this isn't kind of what I thought it would be. Is that right? Am I kind of...
Yeah, you're on the money there. I would say it's very interesting, because if I look at getting that offer and joining the company and all of that, it seems picture perfect. It seems picturesque. But when you're going through that day to day and you realize that the work that you're doing might not have the intended effect that you want, or doesn't have the positive effect that I was looking for on people's lives. And it was difficult for me to come to terms with just doing a job 9 to 5, or at those times it was like 8 till 8, but just doing a job 9 to 5, and getting home at the end of the day and feeling like actually that wasn't very fulfilling. There was this passion that was born in me at UCT, where I was part of the investment society, and I started a company with some friends called Aluwani Investment Group, and we invested in a lot of alternative kind of products. So even things as strange as investing in some cattle in Limpopo, I think that happened at a stage. Or we invested quite early into Ether and Bitcoin and that kind of stuff. And that was so interesting. That was inspiring. It was new things that were changing the world of finance for me. But then stepping into these larger corporates, it made it quite difficult, because they weren't thinking into the future as far as I would want them to. They weren't making that impact. They weren't focusing on what impact can be made on people's lives today, to the people who really need it. And I think with finance and the world of finance, that's something that's very difficult. That's something that not many companies can say, we make a direct impact with our investments, with our trading, to people who really need it.
Yeah. So you had this kind of you had this entrepreneurial spirit that started to get formulated at university because of the environment within UCT. And you also were seeing how that could work within impact. You had a desire and a need to see what are the real world problems? What are people around us facing? What can I take within my skills, with what I'm studying, to produce a solution? You then land this great corporate role and move on to a more niched corporate role, and you find that the organization, they're not listening, they're not reacting, they're not looking at things through the lens that you wanted them to. Did you flag that with anyone? Were you vocal? Did you say, hey, Mr. Corporates, this is not the way we should be doing things. I'm your new intern, but I would like to revolutionize your company.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of sounding too millennial or Gen Z or something like that, obviously I wasn't happy with the way that things were going, but I understand that these are large corporates with thousands of people working for them, and it's very difficult to simply say, we need to change all of this, and we need to completely revolutionize the way that this sector is working. What is a lot easier, well, in my perspective, to do is to take a startup or foster your own idea and see what impact you can have and what change you can make separately, and then see how you can expand upon that. So since I was young, I've always been someone who likes to develop and help other people. And I noticed that in studying finance and something very business and commercially oriented, I couldn't really delve into that part of myself that really wanted to help people, that really wanted to develop people's skills. And I found it also quite difficult when working in a graduate program to look at these skills that I have within myself and to apply them to the work that I was doing. It felt like there was a discontinuity between the skills that I have and I have had naturally and what I was being asked to do.
I can see that, and I can imagine it must have been a bit of a bucket of cold water moment and a bit of a realization that work's not working out the way I wanted it to be. But there were, great benefits for you to have gained the experience through the graduate program, worked within the large corporate. You wouldn't really be able to sit here and say, this is how it's hard for corporates to invent and change and revolutionize, had you not have been in that scenario. So we 100% are not here to kind of knock the corporate journey. It's about really understanding what you did to when you realized that you had hit this friction and how you started to kind of move with it. Because I think so many of us within the world of work are kind of set out with the wrong message, in a sense. The status quo tells us to study hard, get a great qualification, and work hard because the company will look after us. But the reality is the company simply can't, and it's not their job to. We need to look after ourselves. We need to have the clarity and know what it is that we really want to do and make our mark on the world, in the world of work, what it is that our calling is. We need to find that, and we need to navigate a career to get there, whether it's a couple of years within corporate to gain experience and then moving out, or whatever it looks like. It's, we all have our own unique journey. So you find yourself, you moved on from the graduate program, you moved into another niche wealth creation organization. And it was there that you started to have a real clarity and kind of, well, I'm not going to put the words in your mouth, you tell me, but I know from you weren't enjoying the work. It wasn't about the work, it wasn't about the environment, it wasn't right for you. Talk to us about what was going on in your mind. How were you feeling? Was it a sudden, this is not the place for me, or did it just gradually creep up on you?
Yeah. I think it's more of a gradual thing. It was quite a progression for me. So having gone through the graduate program, I learned so much. I met so many interesting people, and it's something that I would definitely recommend to anyone starting out. It's so important to get that experience, and so important to meet those people and learn, because I actually learned more in my time there than I felt I learned doing a degree, which is so important and eye-opening. Then having moved to a little company called S-Tracks, it's a wealth tech startup, and they focus on artificial intelligence and algorithmic trading. Again, very eye-opening and wonderful, and everything that they were doing was new and on the cusp, and still is on the cusp of everything that's new. And I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed learning about these new technologies and endeavors and AI and all of these ways that we could potentially help just retail everyday investors. And for me, that was what drew me in. That was the dream to help people, really. And then I noticed while I was doing that work that was actually the crux of it. No matter where I was going, no matter where I was seeking the job or the salary, it was always coming down to, at the end of the day, who do I help by doing this work? And I slowly started to realize that. Actually all this work that I'm doing, I'm not just doing for me, I'm doing it because within me, since I was young, I've had this want and this need and this purpose to want to help someone else and want to develop someone else. So after understanding that, and unfortunately it took me a while, it took me 2 years to understand that, I realized, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I need to have a massive shift in my career. Maybe I need to just go with my gut here and go with this underlying feeling that I've always had. I remember when I was maybe 13 or 14, telling my parents, actually, I think I want to be a teacher. But at that time, and if you look at the teachers that we have in our country, they don't get paid well. They don't receive the accolades that they deserve and the recognition that they deserve. And even if they make an impact on a group of children every year, it's not going to drastically change the world in the way that we really need to, especially for education. So I needed to harness whatever was inside me, whatever this passion was, and I figured that out. And then I decided it's time to make the change. You know?
Okay. And so it was quite a gentle process in the sense that you knew a bit from the past that you enjoyed impacting people. You'd chosen to study a qualification that would kind of set you up for the corporate ladder of success.
Yeah.
And you knew that if you could combine the two, you'd kind of tasted a bit of the entrepreneurial, what if we did this, we could create something unusual within the UCT study environment. And you could see that. And then you realized with the exposure of the organization that you were in, what could be done, what needed to be done. So it really feels like there were a lot of moving pieces that took you to one place versus somebody else's story that might have been more tragic, more like blood on the dance floor. I can't do this anymore. It's because of everything that I hate in this environment. I have to completely change. Whereas for you, it feels like the story was a gradual awakening and realization and pulling together of your experience, your qualification, what you knew about yourself, the messaging from your parents, and what you wanted to do in the future. So I celebrate in a sense that you were staying close to what you were feeling about your work. And I know that's a weird thing to say, staying close to what you were feeling about your work. What I mean is that you were in touch with how your work was feeding you, how it was making you feel. It wasn't just about were you having happy days or were you enjoying the work? It was about what did you want to do long term? So yes, it came down to impact for you. Before we move on into the next segment, which is about what steps you took when you knew then that you wanted to step into something different, I want to just ask you a question because you said, you'd always wanted to help people. Sometime in your early kind of tertiary education, you thought, or secondary education, maybe I should be a teacher, but then that kind of faded. Was impact something that you had been exposed to within your family, within your community? Was this something that had you picked up from your environment, or was it just unique to you? Were you just the little kid in the class that wanted to make sure that there was some greater impact for somebody else who wasn't in the right place at the right time? What was it? So I'm asking you, was it the nature or the nurture debate? Was this who you were, or is this who you became?
I think it's a bit of both, honestly. I think it's something that I was born with wanting to do because that's just what I feel. But I definitely believe that the way that I was brought up and the family that was surrounding me, everybody wants to leave the earth better than what we arrived on it as.
And how they found it.
Yeah, and how we found it. So we all want to make an impact. We all want to create positive change, and I think having the family and the support system that I had and that I still have is very important, and definitely did mold me into the person that I am today, and helped me and encouraged me to pursue what I am doing. The overall need, though, to help people, I think that's innate. I think that was just something that I had within me. And I noticed in doing psychometric assessments and all of these things, I always came up as somebody who is a developer or a helper of people. And I never understood it until I really looked within and said, actually, that's exactly who I've been the whole time. And yeah, it didn't tie into what I was doing. And I could slowly see myself more and more clearly. I could see what I wanted to do and what I was doing, and I needed to bridge that gap.
The two weren't coming together. So you were looking ahead at your industry, you were looking ahead at the people that had achieved, 3-5 years and where their path was, and you were kind of going, no, I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
That's not the road for me, but where do I go from here? And I suppose that's the junction where many people sometimes would say, well, I needed to take a sabbatical, or I left completely and did something completely different. This is the space, this is the friction that creates the fire. This is where something happens. And I asked you earlier about, did you talk to your company? Did you say, I want to be doing this and I'm not, or can I do more of this? Did you try and merge the two? And you very politically correct, but very correctly so said, well, it's not really my place to do that. And there was nothing that they could have changed. But you clearly were a talent that they didn't want to lose. So, well, they did lose you because, free choice. But at the time when you knew that this is not the path that you wanted to continue on, what steps did you take to see what the next, like where was your mindset at, I suppose, is the real question.
Well, I knew I had worked hard up until this point. I knew I had some saved. So there was a point where I said, you know what, I can actually just leave right now. I can hand in my resignation. I can say, that's it for me. I'm going to go pursue something else. I don't think I had an idea of what I wanted to pursue. It was more a case of the gap that needs bridging.
You knew what you didn't want.
And yeah, I just knew what I didn't want. I knew what I didn't like. I knew what I didn't enjoy anymore. Interestingly, I still have a passion for trading and finance and all of that stuff, but it's not what brings me the most joy. But at that point in time, I just stepped away. I stepped away, and it took a lot of courage, anger, mixed emotions.
To make that step,
Yeah, but I don't regret it. And I also don't regret the time that I spent working at the bank and working at STRAX for the wealth tech. I don't regret that because it was an extremely valuable experience that brought me to where I am here. But no, I didn't have a plan when I left. I just thought maybe I will create something. Yeah.
But you did have a kind of a smart plan in that you had some savings. You weren't going to put yourself into debt or have to move back home and live off the folks again. So you had a plan. You had enough to know that you were going to get by. But the decision that you made, I love that you spoke about the kind of courage, but fear and all those emotions that you were going through. But the choice that you made, you didn't know what you were choosing that you wanted. You knew you didn't want what you had. But ultimately, Rush, I put to you that the choice that you were making was yourself. You were backing yourself. You were saying, I'm not going to do this thing that I'm expected to do. I'm going to remove myself and give myself some space to see what comes up. You were backing yourself.
Yeah.
What was the reaction when you said, I'm resigning and I've got no other job? It's not as if I've got an offer of somewhere else. How did that conversation play out?
It definitely wasn't easy. There was quite a few long conversations, and it was difficult and mixed emotions because I was very close to that team that I was working with. But I think
were they surprised?
They understood.
They understood, but were they surprised?
I think they understood.
Did they go, we didn't see this coming, or, oh, Rush, you are the guy that was going to
I don't
do
think
something different?
Interestingly, I don't think they were surprised. I think you can see when someone is thoroughly enjoying something and when someone is not. And I think it's quite obvious whenever you're dealing or working with other people, you can easily notice the people who enjoy their job and the people who are really engaging with the work on a day-to-day basis, and the people who just it just doesn't do it for them, and maybe are just there because they have to be there. And at the end of the day, I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be the former. So I think, it was a supportive breakaway. It was difficult, but it was supportive. And even though I had some saved, I definitely did go back to live with my parents and live off my parents
Oh,
because I
brilliant.
hadn't been working. Yeah, I hadn't been working for long enough to support myself totally.
Yes.
But I did know that I wanted to do something, and I knew for a fact that I didn't want to work for someone else. That was something that was key when I left.
Okay, so that entrepreneurial spirit was really starting to go, this is the path for you, Rush.
Yeah.
You were not quite sure what it is, but you knew that it needed to be you backing you, and you didn't want another job. You didn't want to be another employee. So what then? You've resigned. You've gone back into the family fold. You've got a little bit of savings, but you have the support of taking the hard route, cold turkey, completely leaving. What was your next step? Well, I've got two questions. Yes, what was the next step? But before then, what was the response and the reaction from your family, your friends, and your community? Were they like work as well? Were they like, yeah, we always expected this of you. You were going to do something different. Did they know that enough about you? They must have.
Interestingly, I actually had a conversation with a friend recently, and they told me they weren't expecting me to leave. They weren't expecting me to make the career choices that I have made. And I think, if you get into a very good job and a very good graduate program, and you're kind of like expected to run with it, and that can make your life and set your career on the right path and all of that. But I made choices that were contrary to, I think, what most people would make.
The status quo, sure.
Yeah. And I think my family was very, very supportive of, and they always have been very supportive of whatever decision I choose to make, because I think they've instilled within myself and in my brother that whatever we put our minds to, if you just work at it and you work hard enough, you can achieve that. So that's
Wonderful.
kind of, that's what I grew up with, and that's what I left the company knowing within myself, that if I back myself, if I believe in what I've known, and I see an opportunity and I truly go for it, I can make it happen. So yeah.
So fueled with excitement, courage, fear, and a whole lot of, I'm going to do this thing. What then happened? You've handed in the corporate staff card, or the gate pass to the corporate world. You're now in the space of like this is the fascinating thing. What happened? What went on? Talk us through it.
So the pandemic hit, right? And that was March, I suppose, March of last year. I'd been following it quite closely. Yeah. But for most people in South Africa, that hard lockdown was, the thing of nightmares. Yeah. And for me as well, I had just left my job and decided, what am I going to do, So I took that time and thought long and hard about what I'm good at. And eventually one day, just out of the blue, as I was talking to someone that I know, I realized, your mom pays way too much for tutoring. And then I just thought to myself, there's so many people across the country who cannot get or cannot afford supplementary education and cannot afford the education that they deserve and that they need. How many people, and then I started researching how many people across universities drop out. I started thinking about the struggles that I went through in university, whether it was, struggles with actually performing academically or mental health, or understanding how my friends struggled with their degrees and retook courses again and again and again. And I realized, even for all of these people, even though you could say we can afford the more expensive additional tutoring and stuff, even then they struggled still.
It's
So
not
what needs to
sustainable.
change? Yeah, it's not sustainable. And how can we change this? How can we make it better? How can we reduce the dropout rate? How can I make a positive impact and leverage that innate desire to help people and develop people? And then, yeah, this idea came to me to start Onyx Educate, and then I just ran with it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get to everything about what Onyx Educate is, and there's lots to talk about there. But you basically were sort of, what now? What next? And in a conversation with somebody you knew, you went, "You're paying too much. Like, that's crazy." Your parents are
Yeah.
like, "That's a slush fund of a waste of money when you're paying for the
Yeah.
fees as it is, and you need the additional support." And this started to just bubble, and it was one of the things that matched with your need for impact and what you had. So what were you doing to sort of like design that process? Were you like, yes, before, and then Onyx Educate came? But I know you said to me at one point you kind of locked yourself into the bedroom and didn't come out until you'd seen something that was like a viable option. But I really want to understand that, because I think that's the exciting thing. Because how many of us have, there's an idea, I should do that. What about this? I could do that. But then they just become ideas. You had an idea and you actioned it because you needed to create some work. You knew you didn't want to work for someone else, so you were looking for it. But at what point did the idea become, this is something real versus this is just an idea and it's not right? Like, did you go and test it with a whole bunch of people? Like, talk us through that before Onyx Educate. There's still a little bit of gap there I want to try and understand.
Yeah. So I would say I've always been the kind of person who comes up with a lot of ideas. And what's been interesting is I've noticed whenever I mention an idea to my family or to someone, in a few months' time, this company is actually a thing. And I realize, maybe I should have just done that.
Maybe I should have taken that idea. So you're a bit of an ideation factory, Rush. You kind of spew them out. You see opportunities and things that should change.
I mean, I never thought of myself as a hyper creative individual or something like that, but I just noticed this kept happening. So after leaving, I said, okay, here I've got this idea. How do I make it? How do I actually make it into something of substance that a student can actually use?
So you decided to hold on to this one and percolate it. You weren't going to give this one away. You weren't going to just talk about it and then let it go into the ether and someone else pick it up. You decided you were going to hold on to it and carry on, keep talking.
So I decided, okay, let me write down as much as I can about what I understand the problem is and how I can solve this problem, right? And then I got so excited about it, I drove from Paarl to Claremont, which is like an hour-long drive, and I just drove flat out just to go and pitch the idea to my family,
Cool.
which worked out very well. They had some questions and some things that made me think, okay, maybe I need to change this or change that. But from that point, I decided now it's time to make it happen. So I went back home, locked myself in my study. At that point, it was just me and my dog, and I spent the next week to 2 weeks figuring out, how do I go from being someone who studied finance to someone who builds a website, an ed tech company, someone who can teach people across, multiple different provinces and all of these things. So in that room, I literally I Googled as much as I could, and I figured it out step by step. And I said to myself, this is the best way for me to save money and also understand what I'm creating from the ground up. And I think that's so important. If you are thinking of starting your own company, or if you do have an idea, get involved in the nitty-gritty from the beginning. And as I was building the website, as I was understanding, these are the steps that someone will go through when they go along the journey and they accomplish their learning journey through Onyx, it became so clear to me that all of these skills I'd managed to teach myself in the last few weeks. We have so many resources available to us. So by locking myself in that room and by ensuring that the only thing I was focused on for those few weeks was building this company and putting the idea into action, it actually turned it into reality. And for me, that was something that I had never really done before. I'd always talked about ideas, I'd always dreamt big, but I'd never actioned those. And something that always stuck with me from when I was young, actually, in history class in school, the teacher used to say, "Don't tell me what you can do, show me what you can do." And that is really the crux of it. So many people have great ideas but never action them. So many people could change the world or change the life of someone else, but never take the steps to make it happen. And I really didn't want to do that. Yeah.
And you'd created the environment of needing to make something happen by backing yourself and saying, I don't choose this corporate job. So you knew you couldn't go back into employment. You knew that something had to happen. So you'd really given yourself, set the timer on your idea, and, inadvertently, you kind of created the incubator that you needed. You couldn't come out of that room until you had something that you could potentially, you were excited. I loved you, you excited, pitched it to your family. I love that. I can just imagine the emotions, it's the people closest to us that are the ones that can kill the dream, or they can give it fuel. And that's the hardest thing, the hardest conversation. And how many stories have we heard of people where they drove to the family, shared it, and then it was over. They were told, go back, get a job, study hard. It's lockdown. It's, who knows where that might have been. So thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Naidoo for the support that they gave you and the community around you. Yeah, so you needed to give this idea life. You needed to know that it was you needed to come out of the room with something that was tangible. Let's make this happen. And you did. So you built it, you learned it, you Googled it, you were kind of hands in, like ground zero developing it. You weren't talking to a lot of people at this point. You were pretty much sort of singularly eyes down, eagle-eyed, focused on creating it. Then when you had something that was tangible, what then? What did you do then?
Well, then it really became about how do I get this out to people? How do I get students onto the platform? How do I make sure that the resources that we have are being used? And it became very difficult, eye-opening, to understand that when you're working in this space, in this ed tech space, trust is fundamental. A parent is trusting you with their child's education. A student is trusting you to take them to that next level in not just their degree, but in their life.
Their
Right.
future.
Yeah, take them to the next level in their future. And it's very difficult to break in and say, this is what we can do, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to make you pass all your modules and all of that. But I learned quite quickly that focusing on the little victories and just going step by step and working individually, even with some students who I still, even though I don't tutor, I still have one student who insists on getting lessons from me, and I make sure I do give him lessons as often as I possibly can, because
Okay.
going on this journey with us is the reason as to why I have come to where I am today. And I think appreciating those little things is very important. Yeah.
So many great things. Tell us about Onyx Educate. Tell us what it is. Tell us what it does. We're here. We're now. You've got it. You came out of the room. You knew what it was. You tested it. You tried it. And then you kind of just went into launching it. So what I didn't hear you say is you went to look for seed funding. What I didn't hear you say is you needed somebody to invest. You had the nuts and bolts. You had everything to literally start doing. You just needed to start finding the students, finding the tutors, and that was it. So it was a pretty tight, sound business model from the get-go.
Yeah. So, well, let me tell you.
Yes, tell us.
Obviously have a lot of people around me who I trust, and especially my brother who, aced all of his exams and stuff. So he helped me in terms of getting quality content onto the platform. And then we literally just looked to the people around us and we said, you did well in Matric, you did well, you did well, you did well. How can we come together and get resources onto this platform and make it something that's totally accessible, especially in this time of need? And then within a few weeks, we had videos up, we had students coming on, we had people leaving excellent reviews, and Onyx was born. And so Onyx Educate, at the moment, we're an edtech company, but we focus on incorporating the live aspect into learning. So learning online, but still bringing that interaction, that interpersonal, wonderful nature that comes with teaching. At the moment, if a student goes and sits in a lecture theatre, or even if a student goes and watches their lecture online, they don't usually communicate with the lecturers as much as they would want to. Sometimes it's because of a fear of maybe their question not being smart enough, or maybe they're just shy, or maybe the lecturer doesn't want to take questions. And I wanted to change that. That was a fear I had when I was at UCT quite often. Like, should I ask this question? I even avoided some lecturers because I knew they always picked on the students, so I just wouldn't go to those lectures. And I realized with this online learning thing, we can completely eradicate that. For every single person in our class, my objective is to make it feel as though we are giving you a one-on-one lesson. Even if the class is 100, 150, 200 people, my objective is to make you feel like you're getting individual attention. And I think we have definitely been able to do that. So,
So in terms of, should anyone not necessarily know, do you offer supplementary support to students who are studying? So you're not here to compete with UCT. You're here to make sure that the students who are at UCT ace their exams. Correct? It's a supplementary support.
Yeah. So we definitely focus on the supplementary aspect of teaching at the moment. And I think for the foreseeable future, that's where my focus is. I want to focus on teaching students how to win, how to achieve, how to after getting into university, how to make it stick, how to be that first graduate in your family. The dropout rate is exceedingly high. I think it's something like 50% across universities. And if we can use our techniques to help reduce that rate, then I would be extremely happy and thankful and proud of what we've done. So at the moment, we do everything from one-on-one online tutoring to large group classes. I think our largest class has been 125 people in a single Zoom class. And we
Wow.
make sure that we get people who have recently done the course or the module and understand it very well, understand not only the theory, but how to apply that theory perfectly, right? And we teach students how to pass this course or how to ace this course, right? And I actually found it very interesting when interviewing our tutors, when talking to people who have achieved excellent marks throughout their university career, it wasn't always the people who had the excellent marks at school, but it was people who were able to apply their knowledge correctly and answer questions correctly and study smart, because we are bombarded from first year with textbooks that are about this thick, and getting through one textbook takes an age, and getting through 10 of them is just not possible. So how can we at Onyx focus on condensing that content, making it totally applicable, and getting you through to the next course or to the next degree or the next level? And that's what we do, and that's what we do very, very well. And so far, we've hired over 50 different tutors. We're a small management team of about 4 people, and we're making it work. We've made a huge impact in Stellenbosch specifically, where we've had over 2,500 students already in a very short space of time. And yeah, we keep focusing on that and focusing on making a positive change.
And I love that everything about your process and all of the tech is built locally, so it keeps the cost down. You haven't created or built it anywhere. Why would you? Because you built it yourself from ground up. So you've looked to local support to create the platform. But that's phenomenal. 2,000 students. I mean, hearing you speak, it's like, who wouldn't want to have that extra bit of support for exam preparation for a particular subject, or who wouldn't want to just make sure that they've got everything that they need to really just boost themselves in the exam. So it just sounds like not only have you created a need to bring down that statistic, it's unbelievable, of nearly 50% of kids who start university drop out. So you're working to help bring that down, because they're dropping out largely because they're not getting through, they're not passing, they're not getting the classes, or they can't afford the tuition, or it's too hard. I mean, I'm sure there's a percentage of different versions of why the dropout is, but largely it's because of the education's not working, or they're not able to apply themselves. And huge big lecture halls where the lecture's just going fast and you've got to raise your hand and ask a question. It's not really the most conducive environment for that type of support. So you keep your costs low because everything is built locally and continues to be maintained and built locally. And so then the conversation you had way back when you said to somebody, your parents are paying too much for tutoring, you've halved that cost because everything's online, because you've aggregated it. So can you give us some figures? What would it cost for if I was a third year student, if I knew a third year student who needed to get some extra practice for exams now for a particular subject? What would it cost?
So, we're still very, very affordable, and we focus on being affordable. If you are a student and you're looking for one-on-one personal help, our prices range from between 85 Rand an hour up to, if you're looking to work with a PhD student, 250 Rand per hour. But there's a broad range, and we've told our tutors, set a price that you're comfortable with, create that competition in the market, so that we can create competitive prices and bring down the prices as much as possible. And we found that our tutors, they're not only, because we handpick them and we train them and we make sure that they are, perfectly the embodiments of Onyx, they are all here not just to get a paycheck, but to help. And many of them are very, very comfortable with doing this because they just want to see someone else succeed. And that's a key part of what we do at Onyx. We love watching you and helping you succeed. Yeah.
Inspiration from their founder, inspiration from you. You've created the business to create more impact. You saw the need and you thought, this is too much. We need to change this. So it's only natural that the people who gravitate towards you and work with you are going to share in that vision. That's the kind of stuff that organizations aspire to be able to lead with. Rush, so Onyx Educate, it's simple. People need to just go online to the website. They can apply to become a tutor, or if they're obviously, the student, they're needing the support, everything's there. Your website is incredibly user-friendly. It's so simple. It's so clear. I love the way it's set out and built. We're definitely going to make sure wherever you're watching this conversation, watching or hearing this conversation, there will be links in the comments to find Onyx Educate. What's next? What can we help you with? What do you need? What are the next, what are the next steps with Onyx Educate? You're, a year old and you're impacting 2,500, 3,000 students, helping reduce the rate of dropouts at university and getting people exam ready and getting them through to, see another year within their education and building their future. Like goosebumps. So excited. So how can we help or support you? What do you need from us?
So we are still finding it difficult to help Matric students. It's quite interesting. And now that we're leading up to the exams, please tell your friends about us. If you know any Matric students at the moment who might be needing help, we are running group classes to make sure that they cope with this workload that's coming at them and the tough exam schedule that's been set. And because of the nature of education and the nature of EdTech, trust is very important. So coming from you or word of mouth, it just makes a lot more sense than me just throwing out an advert onto Instagram. So definitely just tell as many people as you know about us. And then looking forward, we want to create a company that's completely inclusive and that can really create an impact across the African continent, firstly. And we've hired quite a number of very intellectual, awesome people across Africa who can speak a number of different languages. And we definitely want to incorporate that in some way and figure out how to teach people in multiple languages across the disciplines, teach them maybe even in their home languages. Because I think there's too many people who are struggling to pass because they simply do not understand English well enough. But they might have an excellent understanding of chemistry, for example. So we want to make a big change. Please just talk about us, share us, and if you know maybe any companies that are looking to work with edtechs or are looking to assist students that they perhaps give bursaries to, send them our way, because we'll make sure that those students succeed.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And your focus is primarily within high school and university. So you've not yet ventured further into primary school or anything. You're concentrating on high school and university students.
Yes, I think our focus mainly is on high school and university, and specifically like grade 10s up until about third year of university. It's such a crucial space, and that transition from Matric to university is also incredibly difficult for a lot of students to cope with. So we're here to make that easier. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for choosing to back yourself. Thank you for going into lockdown with I don't want to work for anyone else and I need to figure something else out. And thank you for knowing enough about having that internal awareness and knowing that you needed to do something to impact and just doing it and stepping forward, because 3,000 students wouldn't have made it through whatever exams they did if you hadn't have done that. And for me, that is just like, what keeps you up at night? What is the thing that maybe, motivates you in the morning? It's finding out about people like you who completely revolutionized their career. You knew you had a calling and you knew you needed to do something and you just went out and did it. So Onyx Educate, follow them on Instagram, follow them on Facebook, follow Rush here on LinkedIn, follow the Onyx Educate page on LinkedIn, but find out, look at them and spread the word. This is the, proudly South African startup entrepreneur where dreams are made, and you're making dreams daily because you're helping people ace their exams and prepare for that like all-consuming, scary part of having to get themselves into, where the rubber hits the road, where, all your years of education now comes down to a 2-hour paper. And as you said, and I love the vision that you have for the continent, for Africa, to be able to help and inspire, languages throughout the continent in this diverse and amazing space that we call home, South Africa, here in Africa. So Rush, I'm in awe, and I'm so deeply honored to have had you here on Career Revolution interview series. I really am.
Thank you for having me.
It's the greatest of pleasure, and I can't wait to shout it from the top of a rooftop in terms of Onyx Educate. And I know that so many people have been watching us live, and plenty of people are going to be catching this on the replay, as well as being able to see it in podcast format on Spotify or iTunes. So Rush is going to be here for a little bit longer after the conversation, and so will I, to monitor comments and questions. We're available to answer anything. But to everybody listening, Rush Naidoo, founder of Onyx Educate, he revolutionized his career. He knew he had a calling, he found it, and he went out and he did something about it in less than a year, and look at the impact that he's making. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. I hope that maybe at least I've inspired someone to go out and seek out whatever dream they might have. You never know until you try, You might as well just go for it.
Absolutely. You never know until you try. And I love that. I completely love that. So thank you. We're close on to an hour. Boy, does the time fly when you're listening to inspiring stories and courage and all the great things that you've personified. Rush, as I said, everybody follow Onyx Educate and let's spread the word. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you here. And we're going to say goodbye to everyone who's been watching it live, and we'll see them in the comments. So thank you so much. And we'll see you in the future, Rush.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.